Hey guys, and welcome to the Garage Athlete Show. We're on episode 52, I believe. It's myself and Dan to start off with. Dan has sourced us some awesome guests for tonight, which should be good fun.
So far we have guests, but it might end up being guests. We'll see how we go. I'm just going to tell one of them to give them a nudge.
Okay.
But if not, it's a sick guest. Yeah. Well, tonight, we've got a friend of mine who I met a few years back. Basically, we both started doing strongman around the same time. And Chris Beetham is fresh from his powerlifting meet at the weekend. I think the British Drug-Free Powerlifting Association, where he's just won. He just won, but I think he's currently the Scottish national champion with that, alongside being a six strongman. But what we'll talk about in the show is how Chris is a great competitor, and he did a powerlifting meet on Saturday and then went into the qualifying round of the British natural strongman the next day. So literally went from powerlifting one day straight to strongman the next day. So no stranger to hard work and hard graft. But strong guy. He's good character as well, but trains at home. So I think it would be a pretty good guest for the show. So I'm just going to source a link for us and we're going to dive in. Just before we get started, mate, got anything you want to add in quickly you want to chat about before we get the big guy on?
Had a bit of a tough week last week, like training wise, etc. Just because Willow got ill on the Friday, and that had a knock-on effect to them, my check-ins. So my check-in day is Friday. I got all my check-ins done, and then literally just about to sit down and get them done. And the nursery called me and was like, "Yeah, you need to come and get her." She had a temperature. So it's just one of those things where sometimes life is going to throw obstacles in your way. Not everything is always going to go exactly the way that you want it to. But I think I got 4 out of 5 sessions done. My food managed to stay on point. I didn't hit the fuck it button just because one thing went wrong. And I know go back a year, I would have done, because I didn't have that accountability. And I just know that if I was, it'd just be it's all messed up now. I may as well just go and eat pizza and got on with it. Prep seems to be so things accelerated a little bit. He's added an extra hour of cardio into my thing this week and pulled out 30 grams of cream of rice. So you're in trouble when they add in cardio and pull calories at the same time.
But we got to think in terms of modifications to make you're now getting to the point where this is why you've built your diet up so much beforehand, because now's the time when it starts coming out. So we're having in our little transformation group, if you throw too much, if you throw everything, basically see what what's the expression? See what shit sticks. You kind of screwing yourself up from the start. Whereas what we're finding is now we're into that 4 or 5 week moment. This is when we're starting to pull ththings out or put things in. And for some people who've maybe added things in themselves, we've kind of got not a lot of room to move.
And we're finding it harder to maneuver them around because we're trying to add stuff in, but their activity's already way up here when we're expecting it to be down here. So we're saying add in cardio and just nothing happens because they've already had 4 or 5 sessions of cardio. But it's a little bit of education on the side of it's not always just more. And also I've had at least 4 or 5 be right, I want to do the next group. So that's good. And what we can actually do with them is we can get them to take I reckon having 2 weeks between the groups will work quite well. This is probably something we should have talked about before, but having 2 weeks between the groups will work quite well, just because it means we can all have a bit of a chat about what's gone well, what we want to improve, and also anybody who's rolling over can then basically have a diet break, build their kind of calories back up. We can say, right, I want you to eat 50% more calories now, so that you can come into the next phase refueled and ready, because that's something we didn't get a chance to do with the last ones, is have that decent off period.
Yeah. So sweet. That sounds good. Right. So what we'll do is we'll invite the big Chris in and see if we can get him on board.
Yeah.
Start chatting about all your favorite subjects, mate. Powerlifting and strongman. If you love all that shit. Yes, mate. Bodybuilders love powerlifting and strongman. Actually, I think you would find most powerlifters and strongmen like bodybuilding because most of them start off. You'll hear the strength schools over and over again from starting with Arnold when they're that sort of golden era of bodybuilding. So
yeah, well, a lot until recently it was quite trendy to do both. It's only since each sport has now gone up a level that it's now very, very hard to do both at high levels. I know a lot of people do it, but like you used to have it where somebody would compete in bodybuilding for like 6 months of the year, put some body fat back on, and then go and compete in a powerlifting competition. Whereas now they tend to stick in. So like obviously with Screamer, he was doing powerlifting for a long time now. He's now having to dedicate some time and dedication into the bodybuilding because he's wanting to take it to that sort of level because that's the type of person he is.
Thanks. Hey Chris, how you doing, mate?
Hi guys, you all right?
Not too bad. How are you, big guy?
Not too bad. A wee bit, still feeling a bit beat up for the weekend. But
and we were just explaining to our tens of listeners why you're feeling a bit beat up, doing 2 competitions in a row. But do you just want to explain a bit more of this madness?
I suppose it's a bit like waiting for a bus. Say you wait so long and then 2 come along at once.
Well, when you say this, you've done this before. I'm pretty sure you did this exact same thing a couple of years ago when the comps were on.
Yeah. Well, basically, I just wanted to try and give myself the option of competing in the British powerlifting for the BDFBA or the British Natty Strongman. So it just so happened that both qualifiers were in the same weekend. So Saturday done the Scottish powerlifting divisional and then rocked up on the Sunday to the Scottish Natties.
Brilliant. I was thinking about the other day. It would probably be my preferred way of doing it to have the powerlifting meet first and the strongman second, because I think strongman does beat you up a lot more post competition. But not to say powerlifting really them 3 lifts do take it out of you over the next few days. But I think in an ideal, well, it's not ideal, but I think at least it went powerlifting first, strongman second.
Especially in powerlifting, if you want to, you can be a bit more conservative as well.
Yes.
But strongman, it's just everything you've got.
You have to, unless you're that far ahead, but then you never know, you might be that far ahead, and then before you know it, over the next couple of events, you've dropped it all. So you don't want to be in that position. But do you just want to talk us through how it went, mate? How did you lift? How did your meets go?
Yeah, it went really well. Saturday, I had been more focused on the powerlifting prep, more of a focus on my training towards that than the strongman. So, my training was generally more squat, bench, deadlift orientated, and then some events at the weekend. But powerlifting went well. I had PBs on my squats. I had 270 bare knees. Then it was a 15 kilo PB. Bench 12.5 kilo PB for a 190. And then deadlift was the only one I was a wee bit annoyed about. My best is 312.5 raw, but the pulls all felt a bit heavy and a bit slow. My last warm up, I think, was 250, and then I opened at 280. 280 was fine, 300 was fine, and I should have been a bit more conservative, but I decided to go 320 and just got into my knees and lost it. So
yeah, but I think 320 is what you wanted in that cycle. Was that 705? Is it?
What?
705 pounds, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but I think I think it's a strange one, isn't it? Like in powerlifting, I've had this at a meet before when I went to go and try and hit my first 300 in a meet. It was, I kind of knew maybe that maybe 295. This is maybe 295 was on the cards. but it's not 300. So I was like, well, I've got to lift 300, don't I? I had this discussion with my lifters. I'm sure you do with your lifters all the time, saying it's the lifts you make to get them there. But then when it's you doing it, you're like, no, I'm going to do this anyway. But I think, we know you'll pull that 320 when it's time. And I think, asking to do it, anyone that's done a meet will tell you what it's like deadlifting at the end of all those lifts. It is different. There is some fatigue in there. The fitter you are, the better, but it does affect you, like even if it's just a couple of kilos. But it will come. But you've already done what in a suit? Is it 360 you've done?
363.
Yeah, 363. Was that 800?
800, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. I'm interested. Do you think suited pulling has helped your raw pulling? Yeah,
it's interesting you mention that. I was having that discussion with my coach Paul just recently because I spent a long time in the suit. Maybe about 8 months just pulling in the suit all the time last year during lockdown. And it took me a while to get used to pulling raw again for this prep. But my numbers just seem to rocket up compared to what I'm used to doing for sets of 5, 5 sets of 5, 4 sets of 4, whatever. And I really think the confidence to pull heavier helped, and it's like overload training. Knowing that from halfway up my shins from knee height, finishing the lift, I'm used to locking out a lot more weight. I do think it helped me actually in the end once I got used to pulling raw off the floor again.
Yeah, interesting. I know Tony Cliff goes backwards and forwards between suits and raw. He seems to do all right between the two, and I know Dale does quite a lot as well. But it kind of seems, I think there's this misconception. People, if you can, as you can see in your lift, you get a huge amount out of a suit, because you're technically proficient and it adds a lot. But at the same time, you're not going to have you're not going to have a crap raw pull, right? It's still going to be pretty big. So the suit works if you know how to use it. But I find from what I've seen, the guys that get the most out of it are normally the guys who maybe their sticking point is below the knee, that seem to gain a lot from the suit tension off the floor. It seems once it's almost like if you can get it moving, you're going to lock it out. Whereas I've seen a lot of the guys who kind of normally sort of stiff leg it up a little bit, it still have that massive sticking point where they just can't lock out for love nor money above the knee.
I was exactly the same. My weak point was always off the floor to mid shin. That's why it was very strange for me to feel a deadlift at the knees at the weekend. I think it's the first time it's ever happened.
Yeah, it's good. You've now got a new weakness. You've built the strength to another weakness. That's good, man. That's good. But speaking of, you mentioned your coach Paul. We've got him. He's replied back, so I'm just going to send a link to him now. But it'd be cool. I thought it'd be good to get you both on. Just obviously two very high level athletes. You're a coach yourself. You have a coach. But it'd be good to get you guys on, just talk training philosophies, what you do, your prep for these cycles. Like, what does a coach say when his athlete turns around and says, I'm doing 2 meets in 1 weekend? Is it a bit like all competitions are like, okay then, how do we do this? And it was interesting, you said for this training you focused more on your bench, but would you say before in the last 8 weeks have you put more of a focus on, I know you've been doing your log quite a lot, did you put more of a focus on shoulders and then sort of transition that into the bench?
Exactly that. Pressing was always my weakness, and strongman certainly. And we really ramped up the frequency in my log and general overhead and pressing training.
What have you ramped it up to? What's the frequency?
We were logging, certainly we're overhead pressing 4 times a week and benching once and close grip once, I think. And that was over 4 sessions.
Yeah, brilliant. I think frequency is, especially in pressing, is a huge way to make gains. But it's evident from what you started at to what you're doing now that it's worked.
And obviously just to stop general fatigue as well, we were, 1 session was clean and press, 1 session was push press at the rack, or 1 clean, 1 was strict, and then close grip, and then bench. So
it's a plenty of variation. No, it's definitely. I think you hit a very smooth 190 at the meet. I think there's more to come there. Hopefully a 200 pretty soon. You think? That'd be cool. Hey Paul, how you doing?
Hi guys, how's it going?
Yeah, we're all good, mate. We just we wanted to get the dream team on after the success of the big man at the weekend. So just get a few questions for both you guys about training. But for those that don't know, who are you, Paul, and what are you about?
I'm Paul Smith, and
And we lost. The signal went.
Hang on. Oh, try again, Paul.
Can you hear me? Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
I am Paul Smith, and I am young Chris's coach over here.
We say young Chris's coach. I think you might be younger than him.
Yeah.
So Paul's been a little bit humble. He's current second strongest man in the UK. Am I right in saying, Paul?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, against some pretty big dudes from what I saw on the podium. But yeah, so second strongest man in the UK, and you're still quite young, Paul. How old are you?
26.
So at 26, already competing, on a world stage. You went to World's Strongest Man. Was it 2018 you went?
2018, yes.
Yeah, 2018 you went, and we're talking to a World's Strongest Man competitor. We've been lucky to have Bish on the show, which was great, and let's keep this strongman theme going. But yeah, no, enjoy it. But I mean, basically, we're here to talk about a bit about both you guys, but we're kind of talking about Chris's competing at the weekend, how he had two big competitions in a row, did extremely well in both. And I just want to, we touched briefly about the increased frequency to his pressing and how that has seen big improvements in his overhead and also translating into bench. So we just wanted to know, from you working with Chris, what was the plan of attack to do two competitions in a row? I mean, was there a plan of attack, or just kind of see what happens, or what was your, how do you plan for that?
Yeah, so I mean, normally when Chris has a powerlifting meet or a strongman comp, we normally separate them. So we'll do an 8-week powerlifting phase, and we'll do an 8-week comp build up. But obviously with these two together, what I tried to do was really just bang for your buck. We covered the comp events, and then besides that, I wanted everything to either be a really specific comp lift or something that would carry over to both. So I mean, one of the things, a lot of pressing, obviously overhead pressing and bench correlates quite well. Chris's pressing has come on massively, and now we've kind of seen that with his bench as well. So it's kind of his overhead press has gone up a lot, and now we've had time to focus a bit more on the bench, and then that has kind of carried over really well. Obviously hit 190 bench at the weekend, so really big PB, really big improvement. That I think the frequency of pressing it's something I do a lot with guys. I think there's a lot of skill involved with the press, especially the overhead press and strongman implements. But yeah, it was just really focusing down on stuff that would be the biggest bang for a buck with Chris for the strongman and then the powerlifting on the same weekend.
So you said the overhead pressing carries over quite a lot to benching. Is it not the same vice versa?
It seems to depend on the athlete. I'm a big fan of improving the bench strength, and especially the chest strength. Some guys don't like doing bench press for strongman overhead pressing, but I find if you think about most pressing, you end up in kind of a standing incline position. Yeah. So I find for myself and a lot of guys, when their incline bench is strong, that their overhead press is strong, but it's always good to have a bench base to build from. If I've got a guy like some people, they bench less than the overhead press, and then I just want to build that up to be a fairway in front. So then you just kind of got that foundation to work up in angles from.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always found overhead helps my bench massively, but my bench does zero for my overhead. So I mean, a good example of that would be I can bench 180, but I can't strict press 100 kilos. Do you know what I mean? There's a very big discrepancy between the two there. So I found sort of working on shoulder, we talked to Chris briefly in the lead to the meet, he kind of, before he specialised on bench, he did tons and tons of overhead. And then it was almost like when you started back in a bench, it was almost like your numbers were based exactly where they were before when you were specialising in bench, and it just seemed to climb like really fast. Do you think that's from the overhead work he did before the benching?
I certainly think so, yeah. I mean, we actually stopped benching completely because I had a lot of elbow issues leading up to us actually increasing the frequency in the overhead. We managed to remedy them through physio and working around the elbow issues using the Swiss bar and just avoiding bench completely. And we even had some time away from pressing altogether before that. And then when I was overhead pressing so much, we didn't bench at all. I think within a couple of weeks of me getting back to bench, I might have went a wee bit off programme at one point. And I actually hit a bench PB, a touch and go bench PB, and that was from about a year of no benching. So certainly maybe a wee bit increased body weight helped as well, who knows.
a wee bit, Chris. It's doing you well, man. That's the thing. It's open. Surely the bigger you need to be, the better. I mean, what do you think, Paul? I think I mean, obviously compared to us, you're a large man, but from looking against the other competitors, you seem to be bringing a bit more of a maybe a lighter, more athletic package, but yet you're still right up, the top, and you have been for several years. I mean, what's your philosophy on size? And I would say we're talking specifically open strongman, open powerlifting.
So I think it differs between powerlifting, of course. Powerlifting, you have energy systems wise, it's 1 rep maxes, so you can get away with a lot of body weight. And if I was just doing powerlifting, I'd probably be a fair bit heavier. Sometimes you can kind of have a detriment on your deadlift, especially with starting position. You see a lot of especially the big IPF guys, sometimes the deadlifts really reduced compared to the squats. Just looks like they're not comfortable in a deadlift position. But I think in powerlifting, you can afford to increase your body fat more, and you don't have to worry so much about having a good conditioning base as much. As long as you can get through kind of the static work in the gym. I think with strongman, it's a little bit overrated being too heavy. So my optimum weight's kind of low 130s, and I have been above that, but I find like my log press will feel strong, but moving around, I just feel slow. I just feel sluggish. I'm doing medleys, and that should be a strong event for me and normally are, but when I put 5 kilos of extra body weight on, it just feels like everything's in slow motion. So I think obviously it differs person to person, but I really do think weight gain should be slow and gradual, where people chase the body weight, they chase the static PBs, but as an overall strongman, I think it can be to your detriment if you do put on the weight too fast.
I think it's a similar sort of thing in bodybuilding, because obviously in bodybuilding you're chasing muscle, and people just think, right, I'm bulking now, I need to hit that new high body weight. And it's just like sometimes you'll get there too fast, and you're like, I look like a bag of dicks. Like, it's not, this doesn't look good. As you said, you feel sluggish, you feel awful, your appetite's gone. It's just like, right, okay, now I'm going to have to cut some of this back before I can kind of go again. Well, it's interesting.
I'm going to Google bag of dicks, by the way.
Pardon?
I'm going to Google bag of dicks, by the way.
Bag of dicks. Just me, you don't want that on your Google search.
It wouldn't stand out from the other stuff I was saying. Anyway, you were saying.
But yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because obviously with strongman, the guys that you see like right at the very top, they are carrying kind of some extra body weight. And I think I remember listening to Eddie Hall's talking about like his body weight was always the same in stone as he was like age-wise. Like that was one of the big things he did. I think when he won World's Strongest Man, he was like 32 stone or something like that. And he was eating on like a ridiculous amount of calories like every single day. So do you think some of the guys, as you said, they're just chasing it because the guys up at the top like are carrying so much weight, rather than actually, like you said, finding where works for them and then slowly kind of building from there as they get more muscle kind of like underneath?
Yes, it's an interesting one. I mean, with strongman, if you go back to kind of the Pudzianowski era, 125, 130, 135, maybe at a push, he was winning worlds, he was dominating. And then you got to kind of the Big Z, Brian Shaw, for Eddie, they're all 180, 190, 200 kilos. And then I think at that point, everyone's like, right, we need to get massive. And then Lysis went about 160. Novikov won last year weighing 134-ish. So that brought it right back down. Then Tom Stoltman obviously winning this year weighing 180 again. So I think what it shows is that it all depends on your frame size. If you're someone that's Novikov's size, probably 6'1", big guy, but not any kind of giant, being 21 stone, you can be statically strong, move really well, be a very good strongman. If you're 6'8" at Tom, just a huge guy, you can carry 180 and still be a very good strongman. But I think people don't go off their own kind of frame enough. I think they see someone like Eddie or see someone like Big Z, and it's like, right, I need to be 28 stone and I just can't stop eating until I get there. I'll forget everything else. and then they get there, they've got sleep apnea and diabetes, and they can't run 100 meters. And then,
isn't it the fashion thing to have a CPAP still, or is that died a death, or is everyone still after a CPAP?
Yeah, I can't get my head around that.
Well, here we go. Britain's second strongest man, and telling you don't need a CPAP, or if you do, maybe think about some other lifestyle factors. But it's interesting. You mentioned Eddie there. Like, we're both the same. I was fortunate enough. I played rugby with Eddie's brother for quite a while, for a year at Falcons, and got the pleasure to meet him a couple of times. But I remember Eddie's 6'3", so am I. We put our fists together like this. I'm not kidding. It was literally, you can't see if you're listening, but he was double the size of my hand, despite us being the same height. His hand was double the size of mine, and it just gives you an insight to the mass these guys can carry. But you mentioned Tom. Obviously, let's talk about Tom and the amazing success he's had. Incredible. But if you're saying he's 180, he still looks in good shape. Like, quite athletic, quite lean. He carries it very, very well. And it's obviously worked quite well for him winning. It's pretty amazing, right?
Yes, I mean, I remember competing with Tom, and he was about the same weight as me. He was like in the low 130s. Looked kind of like a basketball player, but a bit bigger, and he's bulked up. And he's not as lean as he was, but he's still, I think Tom's at a good weight for him. I don't think he should go any heavy. Obviously, he's just one world's strongest man. So I think he's kind of found it. 180 can be extremely statically strong, move well, get through a multiple day show, and have the all-round package. I think Tom's put on weight fairly quickly, but for such a big guy, not too quickly. And now I think he's found his optimal weight for his height, and he'll probably, I imagine he would stay around that for the rest of his career, but we shall see.
I mean, talking about optimal weights, how do you feel, Chris, about your weight? Because I know you were a lot lighter back in your sort of rugby playing days. I mean, how do you feel about your weight? Do you think you're going to keep pushing, or is this, what do you feel about it?
Okay, now I think when I was playing rugby, I was about 105, 110 kilos. And then when I stopped playing rugby altogether, focused on powerlifting and strongman, I went up to about 120, under 125. And just the last year or so, last 2 years, I went up to 135. I was up in the early 140s at one point, but I just couldn't move. I felt horrendous, so I'm down at 135 now. Feel good. Still feel fairly mobile. Not quite as mobile as I was, but I've got the carryover and the static strength. It's allowed me to just push that a little bit more and get a wee bit more out of the suit. So, I feel okay now. I feel like I could go a bit heavier, but if it's detriment to my moving, I'll just stay this way.
Yeah, no, it's because I think moving is it's traditionally been quite a good event for you. Normally, I'm trying to think when I've watched you. I think we've only competed once in Hungary together, but obviously I've known you for a while because I was, believe it or not, a 105 at one point just back in the day. But
I remember you well at that way.
Yeah, little fucking, it's like a beanpole, man. But yeah, never mind. I'm glad I bulked. I think when I first met Paul was the ref. I think Harmison convinced you to come down. Do you remember Newcastle's Strongest? It must have been like 2017, 2015. 2015, yeah, but so Paul's there, but I wasn't into really strongman at the time. This is just a quick story on Paul. So I'm a 105 strongman. I'm going for my max squat on the day because we had like a world's strongest man sort of style squat to a box, but it was for a max rep. And we had I was in the novice class. We had novice lifters. I think I managed to do 230 on the day, which for me was just great. But the guy for me just did 220, but he didn't quite get up. He's got all the he's got the triple ply knee sleeves on. He's got the 2 belts. He's got everything. It falls in half. And bear in mind, I didn't know Paul was at the time, and I think he might have been a bit lighter. Paul just kind of rocks up underneath it, no warm up, just picks up 220 in a front squat, and then just puts it back in the rack. And bear in mind, we're at a strongman competition. Just the whole sort of gym sort of stops. Did that just happen? We're like, yeah. And then you sort of do it. You start learning who Paul is and how fucking strong he is. And you're like, oh yeah, now it makes sense. But I've never seen anyone just cold front squat 220 and just put it back in a rack like that. I was like, that's quite impressive. But I digress. But that was, I think you were back in your smaller days a bit then as well, Paul. But it was just a cool story about Paul. But then talk about fighting weights. I think it's interesting saying maxing out weight class, all that kind of stuff. I found you mentioned a really good point about deadlift positioning. I found when I start getting past a certain weight, so for me around 119 plus, my deadlift just feels weird. It doesn't ever feel right. Because I find when I'm even just like a few kilos lighter, it just feels much better. But then I've you know, we had the USA PL Nationals the other day, and even like lifters like Jen Thompson, she was saying from just a couple of pounds different in her body weight, her squat just didn't feel right. So everyone's kind of, you know, you've got that kind of body weight where you feel best at. So I mean, it's good to maybe for most athletes, strength athletes, to know when it's almost like you say diminishing returns for when you've probably got too big, or maybe you could be a bit too light for your weight class. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
You want to go?
Yeah, go for it, Paul.
All right. Yeah, so I think obviously it's something I see a lot with deadlift, and I found it myself when I put weight on your squat. You know, you just get into the hole, you just bounce out. Literally, everything's just, there's a lot of tissue touching each other, and it just pops you out. But
She was
pressing as well.
I like it.
I don't know how to phrase it, but I found with the deadlift, it's just getting your air in, and sometimes it can mess your bar path up. I see a lot of guys when they get too big, the bar pops out at the start and then comes out and around the knee, and it just kills the speed off the floor, and then they're struggling to lock out. I've got a client at the moment that's put a little bit too much weight on. He's got squat and bench PBs, but his deadlift form's gone a little bit, so we're working on that. But yeah, it's really common, and obviously as a powerlifter, it's all about managing your total. So you can take 5 kilos off your deadlift if it puts 10 on your squat and bench, but it's just finding that perfect ratio where you can maximize, you know, obviously your total. I think it's something where you can experiment a little bit, go up a couple of kilos, see how you feel, go down a couple of kilos, see how you feel. And then from there you gauge. It's not like, right, I'm going to make a choice, I'm going to get heavier now, and that's it. You know, you can go up, maybe go up a weight class, right, that's not good, come back down. I think sometimes people go into that theory of, well, I've put this weight on, this is my plan, I'm just going to carry on and make it work. When sometimes it's like, failed experiment, bring it back down, let's see how it goes. I don't know if anyone is a basketball fan here, but there was a story, I think it was Charles Barkley, and he was basically power forward as a college player, was 300 pounds. He was overweight and too fat, but he got highly recruited, got to the NBA, and one of the players, I think it was Moses Malone, said, right, we need to drop your weight down. So he got to 290 pounds, 280 pounds, started to feel a lot better, 280, 270, 260 was started to be like really high up in the league. 250, and he said at that point, I felt amazing athlete. He was one of the best players in the league. So keep coming, got to like 240, and then I think went to 235, and then he started getting pushed around a little bit, felt weak, didn't have the energy. So he went back up, and then 250 was kind of his playing weight for most of his career. And it was a simple thing he got him to. He was heavy, got him to go lighter, and then he found that sweet spot in the middle, came back to it. And I think that's what guys should do. If it goes too heavy, it's fine. You can bring it back down, but don't continue down that path. If it's not giving you the returns, you know, you can come back and find out your optimal weight.
I think people forget it's a lot easier to pull off body fat than it is to build muscle mass. So yeah, sometimes you do have to go heavy in order to build the mass. You've got to be in a surplus in order to kind of like build. And I think me and Dan spoke a few weeks ago about how some guys are limiting their ability to get stronger by staying in a weight class that's like too low, because they're like, right, if I move up to the next weight class, like the numbers I'm expected to hit are that bit more. Whereas like as an amateur, like that doesn't really matter unless you're going to be winning, or I don't know how it works in terms of like professional status in powerlifting, but unless you're going to be turning pro, like there's no point in holding yourself back, because you might be, rather than cutting weight down to kind of go to that thing, maybe you could push forward and in a year's time be at that level, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I see that a lot, especially with coach a lot of Olympic lifters, and they kind of get in that mindset of, oh, I'm a 77 or I'm an 85, and it's like, you've been lifting 9 months, you're going to build so much more muscle, you're kind of too tall, but because you're going to be slightly more competitive at this regional open, you're going to bring yourself back, when a lot of times you just let yourself kind of grow, not even put weight on kind of on purpose, but just eat to train.
Yeah.
gain weight if it comes, and then you'll kind of find out your optimum weight. It's like when I was coming up in strongman, I was around like 108 I can remember doing the before it was called the BNSF Opens, and they thought I wasn't down because they thought it was a 105, but I didn't want to cut back because I was just, I was 18, 19, just growing. I thought I'll just eat and see where I end up. And I end up that I thought being 105 and cutting back down will just kind of hinder my growth for the long term, rather than thinking, I'll be competitive this year in 105s. I'd rather take a couple of years and get to the Opens, which is where a better class for me is. So I definitely do think people hold themselves back too much. They're like, right, I'm in this weight class, when really they should just kind of let the body do what it wants to do for a little bit.
Yeah, I've been there. Absolutely, I've been there. I think I kind of had the realization almost. I think it was a quote from, what's his name? Was it Greg Knuckles? He basically said weight classes are height classes in disguise, and that just really rang with me. Like, well, it just makes sense, doesn't it? If you're really tall, you need to have some thickness, to fill. We talk about filling out. You'd say a good example is Stoltman. You need to fill out. If you look at the guys that are winning the weight classes, they're nearly all freaking either jacked or they've proper filled out that class. They just look huge in that class. If you look, there was a Dan Green, there's no skinny champions, right? Like, you don't see people lifting massive weights in their classes looking, you get the odd exception, right? Being tiny, but yeah, you've got to have a bit of size to move some weight. And I think it was refreshing to hear you say you didn't want to cut because you wanted to progress forward. But I think to say that, I think does take a lot of confidence to do that, because I don't know if it's the easier option to cut, but it almost seems a bit more like quicker success, and you feel good. You get that kind of, I've won, I feel really good about myself, or like, I've won a novice competition, I feel really good about myself. Okay, then I'll do the next thing. But to look long term and back yourself to be like, I'll be a competitor, in a few years, but it just takes time. I think it takes a good amount of belief and confidence to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, you should be 105, should be 105," and I was like, "I want to be world's strongest man." In the Opens, like, I can't. Whatever I do now doesn't really matter. I want to, and if it takes me 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years, but going to win a smallish 105 comp, it's not what I want to do. I want to focus on the larger goal, so I'm just going to do whatever I can to, get there.
So, I mean, speaking of worlds, you've had fortunate event yourself to get there out there. I mean, what's the path for you now to try and get back into it?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a shame this year, because normally Britain's is the qualifier. Britain's Strongest Man. Yeah. It's normally held in January. And I kind of had competed last year at Britain's. I had a pretty bad illness a couple of weeks before that kind of just did me for the day, which was really annoying. And then basically from lockdown happening, spending having less stuff to do and just spending time at home training, I've had like the best year of my life training wise. So I was really looking forward to compete again this year at Brits. Got put back to COVID, now Worlds has happened, so I missed my chance to qualify, but Britain's is going to be October now, so it's kind of full steam ahead for that and try and get a qualifying spot. But I feel so much more improved from 18 months ago. I'm really excited and actually looking forward to it. I'm not nervous. I really want to get out there and test myself against the guys.
Yeah, so
do you find training at home then, as you said, like, did you have a home setup before COVID hit, or did that force you to buy that stuff and now you've gone, actually having this at home is like really, really handy for what I need to do? And then, so what sort of training do you do at home? Do you manage to get all your event stuff done at home, or is it just like more like powerlifting style?
So I moved in with my girlfriend Shannon at the end of 2019, and she had a really good home gym set up already in the garage. We used it a little bit, went to other gyms, and then once lockdown hit, then it really became a godsend. I got a lot more kit in it since then, but basically for me, my kind of weakness at strongman is my general strength. So ability to move, athleticism, condition, all that stuff really high. I just needed to get bigger and statically stronger. So I basically just went into a bit of a powerlifting phase. Lots of squats.
You can't say powerlifting as a strongman.
And I just kind of got stuck into that in the garage for months and months and months, and then ended up PBing all my lifts and we had like log, and we could do pressing exercises, a little bit of stones, but not too much actual strongman. But then once I got back onto the events, I just found my strength carried over pretty much straight away, and it ended up just you know, everything went up across the board, but just being able to focus on just the static lifts, not worrying about all the kind of different aspects, it just did me the world of good. It was kind of the perfect time, and really just getting stuck into a, you know, a powerlifting block and get the strength on.
Yeah, so I kind of think it sounds almost like, I think Bish was saying the same thing, like almost with lockdown was almost like a blessing in disguise. Like, you know, you've got your food, your training, and your sleep all at home, pretty much taken care of. And he said he saw huge gains as well in himself from that kind of being able to smash it through lockdown. I know, Chris, you've got a home gym, right? Well, yeah, you know, you're a very high level, all from training at home and navigating around kids. So, I mean, how's training at home? Is it been good for you? Is it been great? I mean, what's the advantages of training home been for you?
Advantages for me, initially, I set up the gym because of my young child at the time. I felt guilty because I was working 2 jobs, so I was away PT and sports coaching in the evenings, and then I was trying to go away another nights to train. So you know, it caused issues at home. I thought, right, we'll just set up a home gym. Makes sense. I can train at home when the boys are sleeping, when the boy is sleeping, Cash is sleeping. Now I've got 2 kids, and it was even more helpful. It was actually quite difficult during lockdown. People probably quite raise their eyebrows at that, but because I got injured and I couldn't train how I wanted to train, and I was furloughed from work, so you know, I had all the time in the world to train, and I couldn't actually train how I wanted to. It was really, really frustrating, and I couldn't let anyone else train. So it was difficult, but just being able to go in and focus on things like my pressing, you know, as often as I want, as often as I'm told to, and go in and focus on mobility when I need to as well. It's been hugely beneficial for me. Even, you know, at weekends when you're trying to balance the work-life training routine, you know, having the kids outside when I'm doing strongman events and having a bit of fun in between it, you know, it's really helpful for everybody.
No, absolutely. I can see Kirsty in the background. You have a very understanding partner, Chris.
She's smiling there in the background.
I would love her to have a chat with my wife, like, you know, the balance, like we know for well.
Just saying, all the wives get on.
Yeah, it's not, but it, like you say, it is amazing. I think, you know, being able to sort of train from home and you know that you're still there, and you know, if shit hits the fan, of course you'll drop the log and go do what you need to do if the kids are fighting or something like that. But you know, it is lovely. I think it's great for the kids as well to almost grow up in that environment, seeing weights and, you know, you pushing yourself. And I'm pretty sure, I bet they've sort of picked up a couple of dumbbells or are keen to join in with their dad. Eh?
Yeah, Cash is always involved. He's running about trying to pick up dumbbells and the easy bar and run about with little stones and stuff. So it's been great. But it's funny you mentioned that. There was a session Paul and I had planned and we've been peaking for on a strict press. I think my youngest was maybe, I don't know what age he was, 6 months old at the time, and Kirsty was away, and I'd put Ozzy, my youngest, down for a nap, and then I was going out to do my session, and it was to peak at 1 rep maximum strict press. But I started crying halfway through it. It was like I'd done my last warm up and I was stood in the garage thinking, right, I just need to do this lift. But he's rolling and crying like, I can't, I've got to go and get him, you know. So I go up, make sure he's all right, get him back asleep, go back down, try and hit my lift, and I feel it.
Yeah, dude, that is any parent will know exactly this. I was always thinking the law of being a parent, right, is you'll take your pre-workout, you'll go to get your session, you're ready to go, and then kids will start crying or something will kick off, and you're just like that. So I'm wired and amped up for no reason whatsoever. Yeah, so enjoy it while you can, Paul. If you just sleep and train in the week and everything, you know.
Yeah, but you know, I think actually it's helped me develop as an athlete for comp days, because you know, it doesn't matter what gets thrown in your way on a comp day now. Anyway, you know, I remember when I first started and I was a novice lifter, and I'd have my earphones on and I'd have a specific song on, and if anybody interrupted that, you know, I was at the sorts, I wouldn't do what I was hoping to do. But now, you know, I didn't need to listen to music. You know, I can just rock up and just learn to turn it on, I can flick a switch. So
yeah, absolutely, man. But I think, you know, you've nailed it. You see so many kids these days literally like fucking turn up with their army of support and the fucking massage guns all the time. That does my head in. But you know, the music on the lot like on its own. It's like I know it's serious, but you know, you have to be able to deal with things not going right on comedy. Like there's been this big. I mean, I'm interested in your take on this, Paul. You've been in the sport for years now. In terms of, you know, everyone seems to complain a lot about, you know, judging, reffing. You know, there was a thing with the loading in is it Bahrain the other month, and it always seems to be something, but it's more just like, God, I don't think you remember like it used to be. You know, like when I first started, like even before when I started, it used to be like a car park. You turn up and then you kind of give a go. Like when we competed in Hungary, there was no warm up. You just turned up and did it. You kind of just got on with it. So I mean, do you think people have been a bit, I don't know if sensitive? Sorry,
Snowflake.
I hate that term, but maybe like, or just a bit sensitive, or just maybe haven't developed the skills or the mental toughness to deal with it. I mean, what do you think, Paul? You've been in the sport a while.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's a skill. And I have guys a lot that are novices and like, how do I warm up, blah, blah, blah. I've messaged them about this. I'm like, I'll give you a general warm up that you can do with your body and a band and some space that you know you can do anywhere in the world. Other than that, it's what you get on the day. And the worst one I had, it was Junior UK Strongest Man. I was up against Tom and we had a yoke first event and we said, what's the warm up? He went, there's a car deadlift frame over there, and it was 420 kilos empty. Like it was just too tired. That was it. Yeah. So we all did that cold. Knees thought they were going to fall out, but after that, it was like, well, if I can do that, I'm probably going to be okay. So I've had other things where, you know, your deadlift, right? It's 100 kilos right now. It's 300 for the comp. So it's definitely something you learn to adapt to. And for me, I can warm up pretty well just from my body weight, just running around a little bit, stretching. Couple of bands, I can get ready for pretty much anything. So I think that's just a skill that you learn over the years. Nowadays, people have more kit and often comps from gyms that are well equipped, obviously. But yeah, my first comp was in a field. It had the comp kit and that was it. So, you know, you warmed up however you could. But I think people do get carried away with having the set routine, like you say, music, headphone. They've got a support crew. They've got a foam roll a certain bit, and with strongman, there's definitely an aspect of you've just got to be ready to go, especially when you get to the high levels with TV. Like at Worlds, we warmed up for a throwing event, sat back in the tent for 45, 50 minutes. Right, first man's up. So like we'd warmed up completely, cooled down completely, and then had to go back up cold again. And it's just something you have to get used to. But I see a lot of guys get unstuck, especially when they're strong, but they're not experienced. That's definitely something that they lose out with.
Yeah, no, that experience, that kind of comp day mentality. Have you seen that meme of where it's the Narcos Pablo Escobar is just sitting around looking at everything, just waiting, looking around. That's it's kind of how I felt looking at everyone competing this weekend. Just that it's hard to explain to someone that hasn't been on stage like Don does, hasn't, you know, been under judging powerlifting, you know, been head to head on a strongman event, played sport, that feeling that it gives you, the I don't know if it's the adrenaline, the rush, the feeling of it, and it's something you have to experience. You can explain it a bit, but until you've experienced it, you have no idea how it feels. And I think kind of from just watching everyone compete the weekend, I was a bit like, oh man, I really, really fucking miss it. Here's me, like, you know, playing in the garage and like losing weight. It's a really strange place at the moment. But like you said about, it's a skill on the day, you know. It's you have to, if you want to be good at sport, you have to do it. I think there's quite a lot of people at the moment. I have to almost sometimes bully my athletes into competing because they're waiting for that perfect meet, or I'm not ready, or I need to put some more, I need to do this. It's like, no, you have to do the meet, because you'll only put up the total you do if you never do it. Even though if you want to hit this number, it's not going to happen. So I think just do the fucking meet.
Yeah, if I can just jump in, I 100% agree with you, because during lockdown I set up a small powerlifting club, and it was more kind of aimed, you know, I wanted to help people, I wanted to get people into sport in this area, but I really wanted to
is that people. Dodge Powerlifting, is it?
Dodge City Strength, yeah.
Dodge City, yeah, mint. Yeah, tell us more about that, man.
So yeah, so it was more really being a bit selfish, but I wanted a decent training group to train with and to help me prepare for competitions. But obviously I could pass on my knowledge and help them and get them into sport, and let them try and achieve some of their own goals. So it's been taken off quite well, and the powerlifting competition at the weekend, that was the first one in Scotland this year, or since lockdown happened. And I opened it up to all the lifters, but there was like a group, more experienced group, that I thought were ready for it. Could squat to depth and could understand commands and felt confident enough in themselves to actually target a competition. And some of them actually, when they first got started, I was like, I'm not sure if you're really going to have the commitment to keep up the training, but here we are a year later, and they've just done their first powerlifting comp, and they've smashed it. And it doesn't matter what the total, it's just that they got a total and they've got something to grow from and go for there. And it's the accomplishment in that they've done lifts, they've been judged, and they've competed on the same platform as everyone else, and seen how happy they were, and how much they'll grow from it. It was massive.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, have you taken? I think I briefly remember seeing a post on the other day, one of your lifters. It sounds like she almost came from doing nothing to getting involved in this team, and has just gone, for lack of a better word, balls deep in it, and has really progressed extremely well.
Yeah. There's a girl in the squad, Sarah, who was doing boot camps before, and she lost a lot of weight doing that. And she just messaged me one time saying, I want to get strong, can you coach me? And I was like, let's do it. So she's from this town, but I never met her before, didn't know her. And I've told her this, she'll not make me say it, but she was one of the ones I really doubted. I was like, I don't know if she's going to stick this, but here we are. Straight away our deadlift was horrible but strong. And we've really worked on our techers over the last year. She, luckily enough, she had access to some kit that she could train throughout. Basically just deadlifts and squat, bench, deadlift effectively. And here she is, she's first comp and she's qualified for the Worlds. So
not bad, really, is it?
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's just that I think the music to my ears, and probably Don's as well, is almost that bit of background in boot camp, circuit training, all that kind of stuff, but now wants to get stronger, seeing the benefits from that. I bet you've seen it improve, not just physically but mentally as well, that belief in itself. Oh shit, exactly. Maybe you have something here. Oh, that's mint. I love hearing that. So how's the club going now? Are you back open running? I know Scotland, the rules are a little bit different to over here. I mean, is it all
the club's running. We've been running for a few months now. It's great. The issues I've got is logistically, where we're training, there's one rack, one squat, one power rack, and one competition style bench, and just some other machines and dumbbells. So the club, I think we've got 12 members, 10 of whom normally train together, the other 2 work shifts. So they're in and out in different weeks. But logistically, it's quite difficult because I can have maybe 3 or 4 squatting, 3 or 4 benching, and 3 or 4 deadlifting. Anymore, if we want to try and grow, now it's really, really difficult. And I've had people ask to join, and I'm having to turn people away, and it's really quite frustrating. So we're trying to look at other facilities, but seems to be a severe shortage at the moment. So just take as it comes.
Yeah, mate, if you
for a gym that's going out of business, there'll be a few of those floating about.
Oh yeah, it's not wrong there, man. But yeah, speaking of competitions, you've just reminded me, Paul, you still owe the world and Britain a massive total in powerlifting after hitting a qualifying total at a local meet.
Yeah, my falling out with powerlifting, my brief foray. So I, in kind of a way of kind of forcing myself to improve my kind of static strength, I did can't remember, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, did a British powerlifting regional.
It'll be Rickle, I think. I think you're 1 APF, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so probably be Rickle or Ashington, one of those 2.
Might have been Ashington. It was some community centre somewhere, but I hit a massive 625 total, I think, to qualify my openers. I think
So hang on, just tell us, hang on, this will be fun. So tell us what you squat, bench and deadlifted at the meet to get your total.
I did a 225 squat, 165 bench, and a 265 deadlift.
Okay, which for anyone would be quite a, it's respectable. It's okay. It's a decent total. So now tell us what you can actually squat, bench and deadlift.
Squat, my best is 340. I've done a 200 kilo bench, which is still a bit poverty in relation to my others, and a 380 deadlift. So
now you see my frustration at your meet. But
yeah, so well, I mean, I went in I literally just hit my openers, just hit the qualifying total. I was absolutely dead from the block of training. So I'll do that. I'll do the British. I'll train up for that and really try and hit a big total.
Yeah.
I didn't find the comp the most exciting.
Yeah, powerlifting's not the most exciting sport in the world.
No, I found especially one of the referees and judges really didn't like me, and they were just being a bit of a twat to me. I think because I was a strongman.
Why?
Well, later they said to a friend of mine who's kind of involved with it, they thought my attitude was really good and much better than I expected. So it was a bit of a.
So they expected you to come in and be a bit of a dick, and then you weren't, because you well, kind of getting to know you, you seem like you're quite level-headed and not a dick. So, but is that quite a common thing then, that power? Because like, there's always that weird rivalry between like bodybuilders, like powerlifters and strongmen, and then you've just got like CrossFit on the edges that everybody hates. But they always just seem to have like, people think that bodybuilders are just like essentially jacked up ballerinas, and like powerlifters are just the meatheads that are just sat in the corner like lifting up stones. So is there a big thing like between powerlifting and strongman then?
I don't think so massively, but I think British powerlifting, they are kind of the guys that are kind of the purists, and I don't think like strongman coming over. I got randomly selected for a drug test at the end as well. So I think that they thought I was going to come and disparage their good name. But yeah, she was just being an arse with me. And I thought after that, I didn't enjoy it. I had her being just a bit of a twat, and it just put me off doing the British, to be honest.
The funny thing is, Paul, I think I know exactly who you're talking about. So
everyone I've told the story has twigged onto it. Yeah, so that's not.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about, and yeah, totally that vibe. But I love the fact that some kid, because like, sometimes if you're competing, they say it's all about yourself, but you're still going to have a quick little look on people's Instagrams, like, let's have a quick look, like, especially now with open powerlifting, they'll put people's handles in. So I just love the fact some guys, I think his first meet or maybe just has a little quick Google and it's like Paul Smith, and it's like, oh what? Like, just see like the massiveness. I would love to have that feeling for the fly on the wall to see that happen.
It's funny you say that, because I got read out. I didn't realize anyone else was in my category. Like, I wasn't really paying much attention. I was just getting my openers in. So I went out thinking I was first place, and they was like, "You're in second." I was like, "Oh, sorry." So there's some kid that was buzzing with a 630 total that beat me. There's probably got that photo. Like, yeah, it's not that good. I smashed him.
That's fucking class. You can say, yeah, beat one of the British strongest men. Just beat him, nailed him. Oh, that's fucking brilliant. Oh, of course, I didn't think of that. That's a great story. Oh, that's fantastic, man. But I mean, the way I was thinking about it is like, I've always said this sport, like, that you play, then for the people that couldn't be fucked to play sport anymore, they do Olympic lifting. And then for the people that thought Olympic lifting was too complicated, they then do strongman. And from the people that couldn't be bothered to run around, or it was all a bit too complicated, they then be powerlifting. And so that's kind of my way of hierarchying the sports. So whenever I see people getting really, you'll find the guys who are at the top of the sports, then you're talking to Paul, Chris, they couldn't give a flying fuck, they just crack on. But there's just so much, on the forums. I think Paul's a moderator for another popular strongman forum. It's just complete bullshit. But I always have to sort of think of that reality check, like, look guys, let's just realize where we are in the pecking order here. Like, people think bodybuilding is the same as Olympic lifting, powerlifting, strongman thing, and when you start explaining to people, they just look at you like, what the fuck, it's all the same. So it's very, very niche. But it's good to remind ourselves of that sometimes. But
I love being called a bodybuilder though.
I bet you do.
I absolutely love it. I'm like, yeah, I'm a bodybuilder. Fucking 8% body fat off season.
I love it, man. But, yeah,
I just feel, when you meet people in the street that don't really understand, what you do, and they're like, oh, you still doing the bodybuilding? I'm like, you've no idea how disrespectful that is to bodybuilders.
Sorry, I should be laughing so much, but yeah, I always think like we talk about sometimes like natty bodybuilders sometimes look like just thin dudes in a t-shirt until they take the top off. You'd be like, oh, there you are, now you're fucking jacked. It's like,
oh yeah, you train.
Yeah, you actually train, and then like sort of Olympic lifters, you wouldn't even have a clue. Like in powerlifting strongman, like generally speaking, just look like overweight men. It's like, oh, you go to the gym for that amount of time and you still look like that. And you're like, yeah, like it's just cuts right to the core of you. But we were talking earlier about sort of powerlifting, bodybuilding, and strongman, that kind of stuff. And for a lot of strongmen, if you have the conversation with them, it's normally what got you inspired into lifting. Yeah, it might be watching World's Strongest Man back in the day, but a lot of the time it's from watching guys like Arnie, Lou Ferrigno's, that sort of golden era of bodybuilding. I know for me, certainly seeing, like Arnie on TV, me and Jack as fuck, I was like, yeah, I want a piece of that, and he started learning about it. So, I mean, what got you guys into lifting? So we'll go Chris first, and then maybe Paul after.
Yeah, so growing up, my hero was Arnie. I've seen all the films, and obviously wanted to get jacked and massive just like him, but through school fell into rugby. Was never technically brilliant compared to some of the other guys. I think because I didn't start until I was 15. So some guys had a lot more time under the belt than me. But I noticed that when I started training with weights, it was helping me because I was obviously more powerful, stronger, faster. And I just fell in love with it, and I seen how much it was helping my game. And then eventually, it was mid-20s, it was almost starting to get to the stage that I was enjoying the gym more than rugby. And then injuries happen, and then you focus on strength. So
speaking of injuries, I can't believe you broke your back, man. It's spinal. Tell us about that. It's spinal. I broke my back.
I broke my back.
So how do you go from fucking breaking your back to doing what you do, mate? So talk us through what happened.
So I was playing, I'd had small back injuries in the past, but nothing major. I was playing at the highest level I'd played, which was national, one up here, semi-pro. And then I was taking a crash ball off a 5-man line out and just got split in two. One guy high, one guy low, bit me backwards, and I had a pars fracture on L4, L5, lower back. In the rehab of that, I was seeing a private physio who just so happened to be a strongman, he was rehabbing his own injury, but he'd competed at UK's the year before, and I'd actually seen him on TV. So I kind of started up the conversation.
What was his name?
Lewis Mitchell.
God, what year was that?
I think it was Eddie Hall's first year.
2010-ish.
Well, yeah, probably will be, yeah. Around about there.
Paul's like Ray now when it comes to dates, isn't he?
Yeah.
Eddie Hall's first year was 2010.
Yeah. So I think it was the first year actually that Luke Stoltman was there as well. It was the guys that went from here were Luke, Mark Hunter, and Lewis. But yeah, so we got talking about training. I'd had maybe 10 years under my belt training myself and training specifically for rugby then. And long story short, we ended up starting to rehab together and become training partners, and both decided to do a powerlifting comp as a way of just getting back into strength sports. He'd had a torn hip labrum, and for me, I was just desperate to get back into something competitive after the NHS basically told me that I was not allowed to do contact sports. So after the powerlifting comp, I loved it, but I always fancied strongman more, just from watching it on telly, pretty much, And
it is better. It is. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it is.
Yeah, it's it's just more exciting, isn't it?
It's the closest feeling I've had to match day is a heavy comp. I mean, powerlifting, you can feel kind of you're fucked, but you don't feel fucked. It's only when you get under a barbell you're like, oh, I'm really weak today. Whereas with strongman, if you've done yoke, carries, stones, like your skin's torn to pieces, your back hurts all over, everything's just, it's a full thing. It's like an assault, and it's the closest thing I've found for that match day experience of playing some sport. But strongman is just fucking, it's fun, it's good, it's fucking hard, but it is good. Whereas I think powerlifting is kind of, its beauty is its simplicity, which can also be a problem for a lot of people because it can be a bit boring, but it's literally it's 9 lifts on a day. Whereas I like, so I just remember the meme of Paul doing the juniors holding onto the weight for as long as possible. Right, I need to get that up now. Sorry. So for those that don't know, Paul won. You won World's Strongest Junior, didn't you?
I did, but that was the year before.
The year before, I remember. Yeah, I remember you came second. Yeah, but the me. Oh, I need to find
the Carhol. I remember that.
It was just brilliant. It was so.
Sounded like it had died a death, and now Dan is going to restore it.
Oh, it was fantastic. Basically, my favorite, I think someone memed it was when you're nut, but she keeps going, and it was just that, if you can imagine that kind of face going on. But the reason it was so brutal, right? So for those that don't know, grip events are normally just your hands on the implement. That's it. But for this one, right, I'm saying you were strapped in for this car hold.
Yeah, it straps in, so it's just pain tolerance essentially.
Yeah, so in some ways, everyone will be like, oh, well, that's easy then because you're holding your straps. But I don't think it was, from what I saw.
No, so the thing with grip, your hands, obviously your forearms go you have a bit of kind of loading, but your hands are the weak link. Once you're strapped in, it spays into your skeleton. To be fair, it's generally until people give up and pussy out. But generally, if in theory, it's until everything just gives way. And that was the last event of a comp. I was very close to the win, so I knew if I could win that, I might win the overall. My strap actually slipped on the end of that one, which was very frustrating, which might have cost me. But yeah, it was. I think I was about a minute and a half in, and I was 3 days in a comp, and it was hot, and my face was melting off its skull. So yeah, the picture is pretty.
Were you in America or Canada or something?
Canada, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was just pretty. It just. I can't find. I'm trying to find the picture, but I can't find it. If I do find it, I'll send it up somewhere. But it was just pretty. It was just strongman in a nutshell, just holding fucking random objects and cars and just pushing your body to that absolute limit. And I think that's something that Chris does quite well, as well as going right to the limit. I think it was it Natty's a few years ago where it was you had a bag carry for max distance.
Yeah, that's right. It was a 140 kilo bag.
That was it, yeah.
Max distance, and I won that event actually. But I think I'd done just over 90 meters, which was awful.
The fucking running 90 meters is hard enough, but it's just the ultimate. I mean, I found that with Conan's. I got to the point with Conan's where I refused to do a comp with the Conans unless it was a national comp, because it was just pain tolerance. It just hurt so much, and it's just how much are you willing to eat more shit than the other guy? I think sometimes come down to strongman.
I remember well actually the first time I think I ever competed against you, Dan, was Newcastle's Strongest Inters, maybe 2016.
Yeah, it was the week after. Oh, it was horrible. It was the week after. That was the week after we did our comp, wasn't it? The Natties finals.
That British Natties, yeah.
Yeah, that was the week after that, and it was just horrible. It was absolutely disgusting. Just hurt so much. I think I've still got what do you call it? Scars in from it. As you do, you're covered in scars after strongman. I mean, yeah, just revolting. But this is strongman, hey. But I mean, in terms of injuries, how have you guys been? I know, Paul, your training philosophy, you do a lot of sort of athleticism, and I think you mentioned a lot about sort of mobility work and stretching. I mean, how much work do you guys, do behind the scenes of your lifting in terms of the recovery and stuff? And how have you been with injuries, and how have you dealt with them? You mentioned your elbow earlier, Chris.
Yeah, my elbow. I can't even remember what initially brought it on now, but I thought it was just the overloading and pressing that we were doing, but actually it turned out eventually that, oh no, I remember what it was. I thought I'm terrible at chin-ups, pull-ups. I'm going to hammer these, I'm going to up the frequency, I'm going to get amazing at chin-ups. Because it'll carry over well to strongman, just the upper back strength, they ripping stuff off the floor. But actually, that's what initially caused the issues with my elbow. And I had a cortisone injection, months of physio. The cortisone took the pain away, so I thought, right, I can get back into these chin-ups again, smash these chin-ups. And obviously the problem just recurred.
It's like, hang on a second.
Yeah. So it was actually, lack of mobility in my shoulders that was causing issues and carrying over into, not being able to get into the front rack position properly. And it was actually affecting a lot more of my lifts than I realised, or movements than I realised. But yeah, I kind of forgot where I'm going with this now.
Just talk about injuries. What injury have you had in strongman powerlifting, and how have you overcome it?
Yeah, so actually focusing on my mobility in my shoulders and other joints has actually helped me clear up those issues. Being able to manage it now, and I think it's having that experience of knowing that it's not always something predominantly major that's wrong. It could be just a lack of mobility in a joint, or upstream or downstream of where the pain is, that can be causing an issue that you can actually work on when you're not even training.
What about you, Paul? How have you been with sort of injuries and stuff?
The worst thing I had was kind of a recurring back injury. That was like from 16 deadlifting with just awful technique. Since I've kind of properly been doing strongman, I've not had anything major. The worst thing I had was kind of an upper back. I don't want to call it a tear. It might have been a strain, but basically just every time I racked a bar on the front for probably about 6 months, my upper back, I get like a pull in my rhomboid and I get like a shooting pain. And it got worse and worse and worse to the point where I caught a power clean and just dropped to the floor because it kind of shut me down. But I found actually resting it amazingly did help. And then starting to get regular sports massages on it. And literally it was just that much tightness that I was recovering from doing weightlifting and strongman in my upper back. It was just taking the brunt. So that's kind of the area that tightens up. But since I've had it worked on regularly, it's not been a problem. Other than that, I've been pretty lucky. Besides the odd, tendonitis and usual niggles, I've not had any major injuries so far. So touch wood, I can keep it that way for as long as possible.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, even considering, I think recently I don't know if experiment's the right word, but there was this almost belief in strongman that you can't deadlift heavy every week, or it has to be every other week, because that is a very successful way for a lot of people. But I think it was, I think you're a bit more on the frequency side of things. I think you've experimented with deadlifting multiple times a week.
Yes, I mean, my pull store for literally 4 years, like my reps were going up, I didn't pull 1 rep max, and extremely frustrating in the period when my lift should be flying up, every other lift's going up, conforms are going up, but I just increased my frequency. I was talking to Josh Lancaster, and Shannon was my girlfriend was deadlifting multiple times a week, so I kind of went into a 4 times a week phase. I thought I'm really going to hit it like I have done previously with squats and pressing, and I pulled, after not getting PB for 4 years, I got 20 kilo PB that was pretty easy. Possibly would have been a 30 kilo PB for 390, but I went for 400 because I can't pull 390. I'd have to kill myself. But and now
hit that as well.
And now I've carried on with the high frequency, and I've pulled a lot of rep PB since then. Since December, I pulled 300 for 10 on axle, going from a year previously pulling 300 for 7 on a deadlift bar. So my deadlift's really coming on. I've got push pull next week, so I'm hoping that can hit the 400. But since I've got my deadlift frequency high, it's just done wonders.
That's brilliant. I mean, have you used that same philosophy with Chris's deadlift? I know yours has improved loads.
Well, I'm just going to jump in before Paul speaks, but from my previous injuries, I've found that deadlift is the one thing I've got to just keep an eye on, and I definitely can't go heavy all the time. If we're in a linear block, then obviously that's what we do every week. We'll increase it, but generally my frequency for deadlift has been twice a week. I think recently it's worked really well. We've put one heavier session on the power bar, off the floor, and we've been working on a secondary session of 14 inches. Reduced intensity, higher rep range. Yeah, and actually, Paul never told me to do it, but I switched to an axle on that as well, because my axle always seems to cause me issues, axle deadlifts. And it's been flying recently, but I think any more than that, I would start to struggle with issues in my hips and my lower back and my glute tightness. So.
And that's just interesting. Guys who are, national, international competitors are still constantly looking for ways to improve, to change. Like Paul's obviously a coach himself, done some great stuff in his career, and already, it's just little bits from other coaches, maybe like, oh, I'll try that, see how that goes, and then it works. It's made you much better, they talk about another podcast, white belt mentality, right? I know Mark Bell talks about that a lot, but it's so true. I think it's so important for any lifter, anyone wanting to get better, no matter what your level. There could be something to learn from anyone. Even from talking to you guys today, I've had that big reminder. I'm going to up my pressing frequency on the overhead, because every time I have, it's got better. So I did towards competition. So, well, why am I doing that now? And it's like, yeah, I'll do it again. So, just little bits and pieces you can pick up all the time. That's kind of what we hope people pick up from this podcast, from getting to meet people like yourself, some awesome athletes, great coaches, and hopefully they can pick up a few bits of information. So I think on that point, we'll call it a day there, guys. I know you've got two kids, and Paul's got tons of training and athletes to sort out. So we'll call it a day there on this Thursday night. So thanks so much for your time. So, I mean, where can people find you, Paul, and where can they find you, Chris, online?
So for me, if anyone wants to get in touch or anything, probably Instagram's the best way. Paul's with 94 on there, if you chuck that in, and just send me a DM if anyone's got any contact. If you really want, email me, paulsmithstrongman@gmail.com, but generally Instagram's the easiest and simplest way if anyone wants to get in touch.
Yeah, for me, it's just the 3_beef on Instagram. That's what everybody seems to know me by.
So beef.
Yeah,
it's stuck, isn't it? It's a good nickname. It's stuck.
Yeah, stuck. And if anyone's interested in what we're doing in the Powerlifting Club, it's just Dodge City Strength.
But you can't come, it's closed.
What's that? Yeah, you can't come. You can't join.
If you're interested in
you can't sit with us.
Thanks for having us, guys. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great to catch up with you guys. I know I've learned quite a bit, and as Dan said, that's one thing we're trying to do with these, is get different people from different backgrounds. Obviously, we run the Home Gyms UK group, so we get quite a mix of people that train. So yeah, we're trying to get people from different backgrounds. It's been really, really great to chat to you both. And yeah, thanks for all your time.